Hi everyone, Dom Famularo again, and this just keeps on getting better and better and better. The Artist Series at a Distance, and I am now sitting down with John Five. John, thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me.
John, listen, you play fantastic, man. You really have this incredible sound. You've got this energy. Every note just hits everybody with great excitement. I really am impressed with that.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I want to go back to the early days. You started playing guitar. Why? What brought you into guitar, and who was some of those early influences?
I had three older sisters, and they always were, of course, just like every family that had older siblings. They were always playing records, and the music that they were playing was just wonderful. And it was new music back then. It was Cream, and it was Jethro Tull, and it was the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. I was just so blown away by this sound and this music and all this stuff. And I remember Kansas and all this stuff. I mean, it was just everything that was on the radio, Steely Dan. But then also, just like any kid growing up, 5, 6 years old, 6, 7 years old, I was addicted to TV. And back then, there was a lot of music on TV, like, the Monkees and the Partridge Family and Hee Haw and all those things. And we used to always watch it with our family. And I think Hee Haw was the thing that really made me want to go, wow, I really want to play the guitar, but I know I want to play a guitar that looks like that. And it was a Telecaster. I knew I wanted to play the electric guitar, and I thought that was the only electric guitar there was just a Telecaster because I was so young. I remember seeing this young boy on Hee Haw, and he was the banjo champion of 1977. And I was like, oh my God, or I think it was 76. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I think his name was Jimmy Henley. And I was just so blown away. And that's what made me want to play guitar. I was just like really blown away by this. And I started playing at around age 7 and started taking lessons. And my hands were so small, but I just played all the time.
For people to understand, Roy Clark, I had the chance of meeting Roy Clark many years ago, and he was such a happy person. And when he played, you could hear the happiness and just the way he played every single note. So having that level of influence was pretty powerful at a young age.
Yeah, Roy Clark and Buck Owens, they did their picking and grinning, and they were just phenomenal. I mean, Roy Clark was like, he's a multi-instrumentalist, and he was a multi-instrumentalist and just unbelievable. Like, played guitar and banjo and fiddle. I mean, and played it really well. And that's why I play mandolin, I play banjo. It's because of Roy Clark. And when things influence you early on in life, they never go away, I believe. And that's why we listen to old music. And that's why there's eBay. Because we look up things and say, oh, I used to have this, I used to have that, and all that fun stuff. That's why we watch old TV shows and things like that, because there's a comfort level to it and an innocence to it, if you will. And that's what, Roy Clark and Hee Haw and all that stuff, that's what it was for me. But they also had such amazing guests. I mean, Chet Atkins, anybody you can think of was on that show. And it was like, oh my gosh, you were just like, the musicianship was unbelievable. Even if you watch Hee Haw in the 80s, it was still phenomenal. I mean, really phenomenal. So, that was my major influence of picking up a guitar.
You're taking lessons, you're, I guess, studying with a local teacher. What'd you start to learn at that time?
I started to learn, I remember it was my father's birthday, and I learned Happy Birthday. It was one of the very first things I learned. But then I learned Dirty Water. I love that dirty water. And I learned some Cream, like Sunshine of Your Love, things like that. And I was just like, wow, I couldn't believe that I could, play a little bit of these songs. I was like this is incredible. And that's how it is with, if I teach someone, I say, who do you like? What do you like? And they'll say maybe AC/DC or whatever these kids are into that are asking me. And I'll show them like, da-na-na, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, And that's the magic. That's that magic you'll never forget your whole life. It's just like turning on a switch or something like that. And it's a very special thing. It's very hard to describe, but it's like, trying to describe the color blue or something like that. But it is a very magical thing, that's for sure.
Well, it sounds like you're able to find the hook with those students that goes directly to their soul of what can spark them with the power and the passion of music. That's really fantastic. At that point, were you working on any books at all? Were there guitar books that you were going through?
Yes, I had the Mel Bay, the book, and it's funny. I was just going through boxes, and I still have that same book, and I learned everything in it, all the chords, and it was very educational. And back then, we had books and all that stuff, but now you can go on YouTube and learn anything you want, which is phenomenal. I couldn't even imagine like having YouTube as a tool free, and you can type in anything you want and learn anything you want. I don't think I would have ever slept, I think I would have learned everything there is to learn. I had this Mel Bay book, and I just would study it and learn. I would play all the chords, and I would flip through every page, and I would play everything. And yeah, it was great, but it was no tool like we have today, which I use every day almost as for learning and being inspired myself. And I will search and I'll look, and 99% of the time I'll find something.
This is what I like the audience to listen to and understand, that here you are at the level of your playing. You went through those fundamentals and went through the books when we did not have a lot of, exposure to what they have today. And you had to put some serious hours into practicing. So what was the practicing schedule like? Were you like into it?
I was so into it, and I would fake sick. Like if I had a guitar lesson, let's say on a Tuesday, I would work on that guitar lesson so much. I would work on it so much. But then if I was like starting to forget it, I was like, oh no. So I would fake sick, stay home and practice that whole Wednesday for like however long school is, 6-7 hours. And I would just practice until I had my lesson down. And then I felt confident to go to my teacher the next week and just play it, perfectly. So practice was very, very, very important to me. More important than school, but which is always the right way to do it. But it was so imperative to me to really practice and get something down so well that, it was like walking to me or something.
But what a great discipline. So here you are now, you're playing. When did you start playing with other musicians and start to put bands together to jam and have fun with? When did that start?
I would say I started maybe around 6th grade, and we did a Battle of the Bands. I think I did my first Battle of the Bands in 7th grade, and we won. So it was wonderful. We had some local musicians in the neighborhood, which it's funny enough, the local musicians, I don't know, there was some kind of a weird, strange discipline. Now, this is just in my town, which is very small, but we had, his name is Greg Aiuto, that's his real name, and he's the one from the leader of the New Radicals, You Got a Reason to Live, Don't Back Down. That's Greg. And he would play drums. My other friend, JT Harding, was the singer, and he is in Nashville writing #1 songs in Nashville. And then it was me playing guitar. And it's very funny. It was just like us three guys, and we, our bass players would change, but all of us kind of went on to do well in music, which is very strange.
Well, it sounds like you found a tribe early on that was like-minded, and the synchronicity of meeting these people, that was fate.
Yeah, it was wonderful, and it was good because it was the only other musicians that were in town.
So you're playing together. Did you go out and do any? Were there any paid gigs? How'd that all start to start? How'd
Yeah,
that be?
so we did our Battle of the Bands, and then we would play bars in Detroit, but we were so young that our parents would have to be there. But it was wonderful. It was so important for us to do, to play these gigs in these terrible pubs and bars. I can't express how important that is because it gives you experience on stage. It's just like a boxer. You can hit the bag all day, but you have to get in the ring. And that's what it was for us. We would play these bars and it was like terrible atmosphere and dangerous, but it was so important for us to do because it was live stage experience. And later on, we just, and then it just continued. But later on, when I would go on stage with, let's say Katie Lang and Madonna and Prince and Peter Gabriel were all in the front row, I felt comfortable. I didn't have that stage fright because of all those years doing it in these small bars. It was kind of just the same thing with a different looking audience.
Was this the band Alligator Soup?
This was the band called Dirty Tricks, and it was a very early when I was just a kid, but Alligator Soup was when we were in Hollywood. That name is not very vegan today. But that was important too, because I guess Alligator Soup is really what started my professional career, if you will, because we were playing in Hollywood all over the place, whenever we could, wherever we could, for like no money, of course, but I knew in my heart this was experience. And in Hollywood, there was this woman, this agent, I guess you would call her, that would book bands, and she booked us, and she knew everybody. And Rudy Sarzo, he was in Whitesnake at the time, said, I want to put my own band together. Who do you know? And she said, well, there's this guitar player I know. His name's John Lowry, and you should come see him. And we were playing at Guitarist, and I remember there was no one in the club because they would give us the worst slots. It was like Sunday at 1,000 o'clock or something. So we were like, oh my God, Rudy Sarzo's here. And he was right up against the stage. And I was like, okay, great. And we went down, and our singer was really excited, and he hit his head because it was really dark and the backstage is low at Gazzari's, and hit his head, and there was all this blood coming down, and we're playing, and Rudy's watching this. The singer's got all this blood running down, and the singer goes like this and wipes, and he looks, and he's like, oh my God, guitar solo. And I break into this guitar solo. He runs off the stage to clean himself up. And Rudy thought it was all part of the show. And he was like, this is the greatest thing ever. It's amazing. This band. So I went and had an early, late, or whatever you would call it, after the show breakfast. And he asked me to write some songs with them and to be in a band. And I think that's what really started my professional career. And we, kept it going for a while. Trudy Green was our manager, Irving Azoff's office. And, they had the Rolling Stones and Heart and, Janet Jackson. So I would get to go to all these concerts. I was like, this is incredible. I met Bob Marlette, who I still am very close to today. And we've made a ton of records together. And I'm still very close to Rudy. Yeah. And all of these things are just such wonderful experiences and education and just getting comfortable with the studio and the stage. And I did so many sessions at this time because Bob Marlette would introduce me to all these people like John Wetton from UK, Asia, you know, and I did sessions for him, and Robin Zander from Cheap Trick, and I did Wilson Phillips and Rick Springfield and Baywatch and all these sessions that I was like, wow, this is incredible. But I was charging like half of the price of anyone else, and I would do it in half of the time. I would just go like, and I do it really quick because I was concentrating so hard. And they were like, great, you know, and here's your little money. And I was like, okay, great. So they would kept calling me all the time because I did it really fast and really cheap. So they were like, hey, this kid just down the street, you know, does it for half the price and half of the time. So I got used a lot for a lot of things.
So how did you start to develop your business savvy? How did that start to happen where you started to realize that, you know, the quality of what you're producing is pretty serious? I can charge more. How did that start to develop?
As the gigs got a little bit bigger and I got busier, they were like, okay, well, we'll, you know, give you this or we'll give you that. So it started to pile up like that. But it was a natural progression. It wasn't like, I need this now or anything like that. It was just kind of like if you buy a car and you get a junky car, your car payment is not going to be very much money. But if you buy a more expensive car, your car payment is going to be much higher. And that's how it was kind of with the gig. As the gig got bigger, the check got bigger as well.
Interesting. So now you're doing these sessions, and, you know, are you an organized person? Are you a disciplined person? Were you starting to organize these sessions and these performances in a way that was mapping out a plan, or were you just shooting from the hip?
I'm a very organized person, and I did everything myself. And I always knew that, you know, I even remember in Detroit, I would book these gigs myself and do everything myself. And I always thought, you know, no one's going to look out for me as much as I do. And sometimes it gets overwhelming. And sometimes I let record companies or other management companies do things for me, but it was never up to my par, if you will. It was never up to my expectations because I thought, well, geez, I could have done this myself, you know. And I still get calls at least once a month from record companies and managers and people saying, hey, and I say, okay, well, you know, I don't mean to be rude or anything, but what can you do for me that I'm not doing already?
Right.
And it's a really important question. If they say, hey, I can do this for you, I'd be like, great, let's do it, because I can't do that.
Right.
But nobody yet has come to me and said, well, I can do this. And I've always said, well, unfortunately, I already do that. You know, like they're like, well, we'll get you on the cover of magazines. I'm like, well, you know, I have a publicist that does that. Or we'll, you know, get you to play these big places. And I'm like, well, I already play those places all the time. You know, so I have a small team that is so important to me. And I think this is one of the most important things you can have as a team that you really trust. But you got to trust them, but you got to pay them as well, right on time, right away. Because as soon as that check starts to, you know, get a little later or blah, 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 that's when it's bad. So I have a small team. I have this person that runs my store, and I make everything. I make all my records, all my CDs, all my artwork. Everything is done in-house with this person I have.
Nice.
Every t-shirt, every poster, everything I have. It's me and my co-worker. His name's Rohan, and we take care of the store. Then we have, I have a publicist who's wonderful, and I have an agent. So the agent is, of course, we know Dan DeVita is wonderful, and he is someone that I trust, and he gets me great gigs. So I have a store manager, an agent, and a publicist. But I don't need a manager, and I don't need a record label because I do everything my own.
Yeah.
I remember this one time when I knew to get out of the kind of publishing business and to do everything my own. I remember I was with a major company. I mean, major company. And this is when the streaming was happening and all these record companies were falling apart. They were like, what are we doing? They're all hiding under their desk and they're all closing. So I had a publishing deal, and they said, okay, you have to record and release 15 songs in your year contract. I said, no problem, easy. So I would write with artists. They would go, okay, great, we love it. We're going to record this, blah, blah, blah. You get your publishing, blah, blah, blah. So I met my requirement of 15 songs. I turned them in, and these were big acts: Leonard Skinner, Meatloaf, Scorpions, Ricky Martin, Paul Stanley. These were big acts. Okay, yeah. I would turn them in. They were like, well, and this is what made me get out of the business. They said, well, this is great, but your 15 song is not fulfilled. You only have 3. And I'm like, well, that's impossible. Here's all these artists and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, but if you read the contract, they have to be on a major label. And I said, but there's no major labels anymore. At this time, there was one. At this time, everybody else was gone. And they were like, sorry. And I said, but you're still collecting the money from all these songs I recorded and released. And they said, yes, but it's just business. And that's when I got out of it, because it was so terrible. It was so terrible. It's just like if I was like, okay, you owe me $500. And you're like, well, here's your $500, John. And I said, well, I'm going to take your money, but I wanted it all to be in 20s. But I'm still going to take the money, but you still owe me $500 in $20 bills. Is that terrible? And it's short.
That's a great analogy. And I want all of these musicians that are hearing this to really kind of hear it from you, because that's how it is. And it's amazing. So at what point did you feel I needed a lawyer to get involved to help me to negotiate these contracts better? Was that a part of the equation?
Well, it was, and there was pretty much nothing I could do, but that's what made me go, I'm going to do everything my own. Right. And the only mistake I made is I wish I would have done that 10 years earlier. Now, I was playing with David Lee Roth, and this was in the 90s, like 97. And it was an album that he released himself. Nobody was doing that. That's like, it was like, what do you mean you're going to release this record on your own? It was like, the strangest thing I ever heard. I was like, okay. And he was in his guest house making these CDs, like putting the stickers on. He had people, doing it, but he had all these things, and he made all these CDs. They did a distribution deal, but he made all those CDs, and he made a fortune. And I was like, oh, this guy's a genius.
That was a DLR band.
Yeah. It was Slam Dunk, and it was the DLR band. And I thought, oh my God, this is the smartest thing I've ever seen anyone do. Now everybody does it, but Dave did it in 97, where it was like the most insane thing you could ever do. It was wild.
So how did that happen with the hookup with David Lee Roth? How'd that come about?
I I was reading this book. Now I'm going to get up and I'm going to grab the book. So this is the book and that I was reading, and I was at my friend's house, and there was a number in the back of the book where you could, get a hold of the management company. And I thought to myself, I think I'm going to, reach out and call this number and see if I can, see what's going on. Because I knew Dave wasn't doing much at the time, and I loved Van Halen. I loved David Lee Roth, and I said, "Hey, are you guys accepting any calls right now or anything like that?" And they said, like any music, and they said, "Well, not really, but you can, send a CD and we'll see what we got." And I was like, "Oh my God!" It's like, just that little bit, I was shocked. I was like, "This is insane." So I go there, like I record with Bob Marlette, and I do my best Van Halen. I do Slam Dunk, and I do all these other songs. Of course, no vocals, just my best Van Halen impersonation. And I sent it to them, and they said, "We like it. Can you send 3 more?" And I was like, "Oh my God, this is like the most crazy thing ever." So I did 3 more. And they said, "We like these too. Can you do 3 more?" And I said, "I'm sorry, but I don't have any more money." And back then, studios costed a lot of money. It's now we could just, be in our house and do it. And they said, "Okay, well, Dave wants to meet you. Go to his house." And listen, David Lee Roth is not around. He's not like hanging out, or it's very hard to meet David Lee Roth, And I go to his house, and this is the house where they filmed, Pretty Woman. They did all the photo shoots for the early Van Halen. They rehearsed in this basement, and this is the house. And there's Dave in his overalls, and he's like, "John, great to see you. And we're going to make a record, and I really like what you're doing." I was like, "Oh my God." I couldn't believe it. And then later on, this is, I had him sign the book that made it all happen, And it says David Lee Roth, 1998, And this is after I'm a little more comfortable with him. And I said, "Hey, Dave, sign this, So, you just have to go after things and do things and make it work.
At this point, your reputation is really, growing at such a level where people are hearing what you're doing, the recordings, you're playing live. How did the Marilyn Manson thing happen? How did you evolve into that?
The Marilyn Manson thing happened. It was very strange. I was such a fan during the Katie Lang days. I would listen to it, and Backstage, and Sweet Dreams, everything. I was like really, really into it. So I listened to it and was like always studying it and like really intrigued. What was it? We were doing a festival, and I was playing with Rob Halford at the time, and Marilyn Manson was on the bill. And I was like, "Okay, cool. This is like, this is like really wild. Like I get to see Manson, I get to see him perform, and I'm so excited. And this is the first time I'm seeing him." And they cancel because the guitar player or the drummer got mono or some like weird thing. It's like, oh no. And so I never got to see him. And but before that, I was playing on the Conan O'Brien show in New York, and I remember I was playing, and I ran out of the studio to see Marilyn Manson. He was playing down the street, like across the street. I buy a ticket from a scalper, and I'm like, I still have time. I have like an hour left of the show. Buy a ticket, and the show's over, like, because everything got trashed or something happened. So I keep missing Manson. I never got to see him on stage. And I was like really bummed out about this because I really loved it, the band. So when I was flying home from Europe, when they canceled, my phone was ringing, and I ran in, I grabbed my phone. This was before cell phones. I was like, bags, hello. And they were like, this is Tony Ciula. We are having problems with our guitar player, and we got your number from Trent Reznor, and the Rob Halford album was on Nothing Records that Trent Reznor put out. And we wanted to see if he wanted to have lunch with Manson to talk about being his guitar player. I was like, absolutely. You know, I just got off the plane. I think I still have my ear things in, and, you know, I smelled like a Delta Airlines or something. So I go to the Gaucho Grill on Ventura Boulevard, and I remember seeing this really nice white Mercedes, and the David Lee Roth album was in the back seat, and the Bob Halford CD was in the back seat. And I was like, well, it's got to be his car, you know. So I go up there, and he's wearing big red sunglasses and a yellow Loverboy shirt, and you know, and I was like, hey, nice to meet you. And he goes, I want you to be in the band. Your name's going to be John Five. And I was like, great. I was like, sure. And I didn't audition, but he just was listening to the music, and he knew I could play and stuff. And so I remember going home to my apartment. My bags were still packed, and I was practicing my autograph of John Five, you know? And I remember doing that, and I still wish I had that piece of paper. But our very first time on stage was the MTV Video Music Awards. And if you watch that video, I'm watching the band. I'm not looking out in the crowd. I'm watching the band because it was my first time seeing the band live. It was with me on the stage. So I'm like watching them, and you think like, oh, he's really trying to dial in with the band and stuff. No, no, no. That wasn't it at all. I was just watching them like a fan.
I love the fact that you've got this incredible drive and perseverance to seek something out and just put it into the air of the universe. It's amazing what can happen when that energy is put out.
What you just said is exactly how I live my life. And I talk to Zombie about it. I talk to Nikki Sixx about it. I talk to Ace Frehley. I talk to all these artists about that. I'm like, just put it out in the universe and, like, you know, really concentrate and think about it every day, positive. Sometimes they're like, you know, you're crazy and stuff like that. But that's how I've always lived my life, you know, and I focus on something, and I really focus hard, and I think about it, and I try to put out positive vibes about it. And I think that is the most important thing you can do, and work and practice, you know, of course, and really work at something very hard, and you'll get there, because if you don't do it, somebody else will do it. That's a guarantee. Just like the sun will set tonight, somebody else will do it if you don't.
What motivates you? What drives you? What gets you to the point where you are so fired up that you can put out 9 albums, fantastic albums, and be inspired to do that? What's the driving force behind John Five?
I like to push myself to the limit, and I like to look at things on, you know, Instagram or YouTube and go, I really like that. Or I really like that, and I'm going to learn that. It doesn't matter like what I've done or anything. It's still that 7-year-old kid that wants to learn everything I can learn. And I still am that. I'm learning stuff that I'm friends with. I'm friends with these guys that are playing these things, but I don't ask them how they do it. I'm watching their videos and playing it, and because I think it's wonderful. So that's what pushes me. It's just trying to learn and be inspired. And I'm lucky I still have that. I don't think it'll ever go away. I just, like at Christmas time, I learned all these jazz Christmas carols on guitar. or, just things that I like really think that are beautiful and they sound cool, or something that's really technically crazy challenging. I love to learn that stuff, because what else am I going to do? Watch TV? I know that's nice, but kind of reward myself by watching a movie or watching TV after I've done something very productive during the day.
With that productivity and the fact of continuing to be the constant student are very important qualities. We have several hundreds of thousands of views that we have with these. And what's so great about it is there's a lot of young musicians out there that really want to survive and become passionate about what they do, and they want to go to that next level. In closing, John, what would you say to this generation of what they can do to stay fired up and to be prepared for the craziness of the music industry?
Well, I think the music industry today is way better than what it was back in the day. And everyone's going to be like, what? You're crazy. Music's free and blah, blah, blah. But nowadays, you are able to go on Instagram or YouTube and be a star. The world is your audience. You can play for someone in Russia or Illinois or China or anywhere you want. The world is watching. So give them something to watch, and you'll make more money because the record companies and all these people, they'll take all of that money. But now you are in control. The individual is in control. There's so many other ways to make money nowadays, and it's important for people to understand that. Here's a good example, like Journey. They found, their singer, who's incredible, on YouTube.
From the Philippines. Yeah.
Philippines, playing singing in a karaoke bar. That's my point. If you're great, you will be recognized. Guaranteed. Because people are looking. I'm looking. I'm watching. Put yourself out there, and if you got the goods, you're going to make it. And if you're driven enough, you're going to make it, because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. That's for sure.
Well, there's no doubt, John, you are driven. You've got a great balance of humility. Your feet are clearly on the ground, and you are really onward and upward with what you're doing. Your recent album is absolutely fantastic, and I think what you're doing is totally in the heart of creating, and you are reinventing and constantly opening up opportunities that you can express yourself, and it's working.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And, I don't do it at all to for anything else but the love of music.
That says it all right there. If anyone can retain that comment that you just said, that's going to allow them to move for sure onward and upward. John Five, thank you so much. The Artist Series at a Distance, you have been fantastic. Safe travels, stay well, and I look forward at some point to meeting you in person.
I would love that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Dom Famularo here, the Sessions panel. This is so exciting. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Click the subscribe button to be a part of what we're doing. The views help us tremendously. All of your comments, we read them and react to them. This is incredible. The support you're giving us is great. The Sessions panel, we'll see you real soon.